Welcome to the Derek Creason Show. This is episode 8. I am your host, Derek Creason, and as always, I welcome your feedback. You can send it to me at Derek@DerekCreason.com. That's my email. You can hit me up on social media at Derek Creason on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I've also got a Rumble channel set up. You can go to my website, DerekCreason.com, sign up for my newsletter. All my latest updates will be put out on that. And then lastly, you can go to Amazon.com, type in my name, Derek Creason, and then you can find a copy of my book, 20-something. It's available on paperback and Kindle. Go check it all out. Welcome, everybody. Today is Friday, February the 3rd, and here's what we got coming up today on the show. We'll have some TV show reviews. I'll go over some news and give you some of my reactions to a couple different stories. We'll talk sports, some NFL, and some pro wrestling. And then we'll wrap it up today with a little bit of faith segment. That's what's coming up on the show today. So what have I been up to lately? My recent life updates. Lately, the last week or two, I've been getting the itch to be creative again. And podcasting seems to be the most manageable size of project that I seem to be able to fit into my busy life. So I've been working on this episode, or at least the idea of it, for quite a while. But finally got around to a couple days ago writing it. And here I am trying to record it. So hopefully I can get it edited and published here pretty quick. In 2022, I did 4 episodes last year. So taking my dad joke, I say in every episode that we're going to do more episodes. That was a lot more than we did in 2019 and 2020. So we're going to see if we can get 8. Maybe we'll try for twice a month, but we'll see how it goes. And it's already February and I got 0 done so far. So I'm already running behind, but it's all good. What's going on with me? I got home from deployment in November, just a couple days before Thanksgiving. Since then, I've had Thanksgiving, Christmas. I went on a trip to Chicago. I went on a trip to San Antonio, did Christmas break with the kids. The kids went back to school in January. And then I also went back to work right before the New Year's, actually a couple days before Christmas. And then I've been back at work for about a month now in January. That's kind of some high-level highlights of what's been going on with me. I'm super busy, for sure. I've also written up the outline. I'm going to work on some of these deep dive episodes I mentioned last time, maybe the time before. And I've gotten 3 ideas and 3 outlines started on those. So hopefully sometime in the next few months, I'll get around to recording those. And they'll be kind of a different format than just a generic episode of variety of topics to cover. So that's what's coming up, and that's what I've been up to lately. All right, first up is TV shows. I know normally I talk about movies because I watch a lot of movies, but I haven't watched a lot of movies lately. So we're going to talk about TV shows today. So what shows have I been watching lately? So I've got 3 that I'll talk about here real quick, and then 1 that I'm looking forward to. So the shows I've been watching lately. Just started watching the show The Recruit on Netflix. It's about a lawyer guy starting out at the CIA. It's kind of interesting. It's like a drama, but then it's also a little bit of like satire / comedy, but it still takes itself seriously. So it's kind of an interesting premise. I think I've watched 2 episodes so far, and it's been pretty entertaining. I'm interested to keep watching that and see how it goes, but so far it seems pretty neat. The next show I've been watching is Tulsa King. I've only watched, I think, 3 episodes of this. It's on Paramount Plus with, I was going to say Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone, that's his name, and he is getting old. Man, he's like 75, 80 years old or something now, but he's still a pretty decent actor, and the show seems pretty entertaining. The premise is he's a former mafia guy who just got out of prison for 25 years, and then he still works for the mafia, and they moved him out to Tulsa to try to set up a shop and run and do mafia-related stuff and run schemes. And it's building characters and starting to intertwine some stories from his past and stuff. And it seems pretty interesting so far. So I'm liking it, and we'll see how it goes. That's on Paramount Plus. Another show that I've been watching and finishing up is also on Paramount Plus is SEAL Team. I've been watching this latest season. I think it's season 6. They are over in Syria and Jordan a lot. I like this show a lot. I really like the first 5 seasons. This season hasn't quite seemed as interesting. The story's just been kind of downhill a little bit, not as interesting, kind of forced. But that's okay. Shows go through ups and downs like that, so maybe it'll pick back up and have a better story arc in the next season or not. But what I like about this show is some of their episodes, and he came over to the base I was at in Jordan, to the USO, and just met with soldiers and hung out for a couple hours. That was a really cool thing for him to do. He didn't have to do it at all. He just wanted to come hang out and show his appreciation for us who were overseas on deployment. So I got to meet him while I was on deployment in Jordan, and I thought that was pretty neat. There's an episode where they go to the Citadel in Jordan, and I actually got to go visit that place. So it was cool to see in a TV show where they're filming on location and be like, yeah, I've been there, and I've been there, and I saw that. So I thought that was pretty neat. The SEAL Team show is pretty good. It's been on CBS and then switched to Paramount Plus the last couple years. I've liked it for the most part. It's been pretty good entertainment, so go check that out. What shows am I looking forward to? So I will try to post a link to it in the show notes, but they just released the full trailer for Picard Season 3. And if you know anything about me, I am a big Star Trek nerd. I'm a big fan of Star Trek. I really like Next Generation. That's been my favorite. And it looks like in this season of Picard, they're bringing back all of the crew from Next Generation. The trailer looks really good. I'm hoping it has some good storytelling to go along with that. I'm getting them all back together. Season 1 of Picard was really cool. It had a lot of great nostalgia, and it really finished the story arc of Data, who's my favorite character in Picard, and their relationship, and I thought that was really well done. They also added in some cool stuff that season with the Borg and the Romulans and the synthetic life forms. So that was a good season. Season 2, in my opinion, was a wasted side quest. It sucked. They brought back Q, who's one of the best villains from Next Generation, and then they set him on a silly side quest time travel mission, and it just seemed like 8 episodes of filler episodes. So I was like, it was okay, but it could have been a lot better. The Season 3 trailer looks awesome, so I have high hopes since they're saying it's the final season, and it probably should be because Patrick Stewart is getting really old. He might be getting too old to play the character. So we'll see how it goes. I got high hopes for it, and I'm looking forward to that coming out in the next few months. So that's what I've been watching on TV. Let me know what you think. If you've got any good recommendations, send them my way, and we will go from there. All right, next up is the news. So I always mention when I talk about the news that you can go to allsides.com and kind of look at the different biases and where a bunch of different mainstream media outlets rank from way left liberal to way right conservative. I also mentioned a couple episodes back, if you go to my Twitter page and then go to my news list, you can see all the news organizations that I follow on there, and I've gone through them. And then I try to follow places from all different sides and just try to drown out as much specific bias as possible, and also admit that I have my own bias while doing that. But I try not to just take my news from one side or the other or the middle. I try to get news from all of it and then try to put it together to get as best a full story as I can, while also taking everything in with a huge grain of salt and not believing any of it until it's been very much confirmed. So I'm from the state of Missouri. You got to show me. I'm not just going to take everything at face value. All right, so let's go over some of the headlines that have been happening recently. So first up, politicians and classified documents. This story has been going on forever. It started with Trump, and now it's Biden, and then now it's Pence, and then who knows who it's going to be next week. And people are saying, the same standard should be applied to one that's applied to the other. Or, you were more against this guy, but not against this guy because he's on your team or he's your preferred person. Whatever. You know what? Let me say a few things, how I feel about it, and we'll see how you feel about it. I have a security clearance. I'm in the military. I have to attend training every year on the proper handling, labeling, and storage of classified documents. If I break those rules, I face all kinds of punishment. I could lose rank, I could lose my clearance, I could lose my job in the military, and I could possibly even go to jail if I break those rules. It seems, at least in my opinion, politicians get to play by a different set of rules. I think everyone should be held to the same standard regardless of whether you're a low-level army soldier, you're a high-ranking politician, you're a general, you're a person of Congress, whatever. The government has taken the time to write out these rules, set these standards in place for keeping stuff classified and secret and safe, to keep people alive, to help protect our country, etc., etc. When certain groups of people get to play fast and loose with those rules or get held to a different set of rules, that looks like banana republic crap. It pisses off a lot of regular Joes, regular people who are more likely to not get to play by the fake rules or whatever, or not that we even want to. We just want the standard to be applied fairly. If I'm held to a standard and you're supposedly held to the same standard, then let's do it. Let's hold everyone to the same standard. I also, as it's related to this stuff, I don't for political advantage. All that does, in my opinion, is just create further distrust of the government, specifically the Justice Department and FBI, and it really helps lower the credibility of the media as well, who obviously seem to be in the pocket of one side or the other, depending on your preferred narrative and whose agenda they're trying to push and or who are they trying to bury politically, who's their enemies. That's kind of my take on it. Frustrating. I don't really care if it's Republicans, Democrats, generals, congressmen, senators, politicians, contractors, whatever. If you've been cleared and been given a clearance, that's a trust that it's a public trust that's been given to you, and you should try to follow those rules as best as you can. And then you should be held responsible when you break them, either knowingly or unknowingly. So that's what I got to say about that. Next up in the news, Ukraine. Ukraine's been in the news forever. The invasion of Ukraine started when I went on deployment last year, and it was quite interesting because I was going over to the Middle East, and I was like, well, that's not far away from Ukraine. But luckily for me, it's in a different area of operations for the Army, the Middle East versus Europe. But Ukraine, man, what in the world is going on there? There seems to be so many layers to this stuff, and a lot of it, in my opinion, seems shady. Why does it seem that all the developed nations of the world are using Ukraine to be the hip new place to be their slush fund for sending billions of dollars there, hiding money for other things? I think every secret project seems to be going through the budget for Ukraine. What kind of oversight and accountability do we have for the billions and billions and billions of dollars we've sent over there? Have we even thought about, should we actually be involved in a local issue that's going on over there? Why is Zelensky so popular all of a sudden? Why does everybody seem to be hell-bent on going into World War III? Why is our foreign policy saying we need to be the world police for every little country all over the world? I feel there's a lot of serious questions. I feel there's a lot of layers that I don't know about, that a lot of people in general don't know about. And the more I learn about complicated things, just looking back at the last 20 years of Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff like that, there's not a lot of necessarily good planning, and a lot of things go wrong. And then a lot of people and groups take advantage. A lot of military contractors and stuff like that use it to their advantage. I think a lot of organizations have used it to their advantage. I think there's a lot of political backstory we don't know about. I think there's just so much more going on here than what we hear on the day-to-day evening news or read on Twitter or the news websites. I don't have the answers, but it smells fishy to me. I don't like how we're sending them tanks, and now everyone's getting ready to give them planes and all this kind of stuff. I don't think it's going to turn out well for Russia either. I don't think Putin expected it to last longer than 3 months, and he's going to have a rough year if he can't find a way to spin that as a win here pretty quick, I think, in his country. But that's not my problem. It's interesting to think about and study from a geopolitical scale, on a global scale. I think that it's just crazy, all the stuff that's going on related to that. And I wish we had some better journalists out there that could help kind of dig into it. And maybe there are some that I just haven't come across. But I think the whole thing seems fishy, and they're ramping up for World War III, it sounds like, and I want no part of it. That's my thoughts on Ukraine. All right, and lastly, up in the news is the debt ceiling fight. This is the same old story that pops up every 3 to 6 months or 9 months of every budget year. It seems like Congress can't ever pass a budget. They haven't done it in forever. The fiscal conservatives like Rand Paul will get out there and say, hey, you've got to negotiate. We've got to do better. And I agree with that. We've got to do better. We've got a debt that's $31 trillion. We've got probably even more than that in unfunded liabilities. It's irresponsible and it's insane. but I don't think it will really affect us that much until some other country rises up to be as powerful as us and calls the notes on our debts. So that probably won't happen anytime soon, but it is more possible than it has been in a long time. I think, unfortunately, a lot of Congress doesn't care about the money because they own the printing press and they can just continue to kick that can on down the road. This is making actual cuts to spending. There's too many special interests, too much pet projects, too much bureaucracy, all intertwined. And even if someone did vote against it, they've got to give up votes on something else. And so even if your favorite person says yes or no to this that you like, they're going to have to say yes or no to something you do or don't like down the road because everything is so intertwined. That's just kind of been the way it's been for a long time. I wish that us as regular people were allowed to be that, I don't know, what's the word? Irresponsible with our money. Imagine when you maxed out your credit card, you could just get another one and keep going and then get another one when that got full and you never had to try to pay them off, or you just did it in name only. To me, that's just insane that they're allowed to operate like that with no recourse for how they're spending the money. I honestly don't see anything changing this anytime soon. It's political theater. It's like WWE. It's good guys versus bad guys when they're out on stage, and then they all go back and they're on the same team once they're behind closed doors, and they'll just make some deals. Some people will get more out of it than they want and others won't. The debt ceiling will get raised. The spending will increase. Life will go on. This will continue to be a big problem and continue to be a big show for people to talk and click and write about, but it's not going to change that much. I wish it would. I think it's important. It is a big problem, but it's not the biggest problem that America is facing right now. And so, unfortunately, it's just going to get kicked down the road like usual and then wind about later. That's my prediction. I'll put the links to all these articles. I didn't mention them when I was talking about them, but I do got articles that were related to the clearance documents, Ukraine, and the debt ceiling. I'll put all those links in the show notes so you can see what I was looking at when I decided to write and talk about these news issues. So that's all for the news today. All right, next up is sports. I only got two quick things to talk about in sports this week. And first up is the Chiefs. Yeah, they are going back to the Super Bowl. They won the AFC Championship game against the Bengals. Man, that was the stressful last quarter and really stressful last 2 minutes of the game. It seemed like we could just not get open. We couldn't get anybody open. We couldn't get our offense recalibrated after halftime. Things just weren't going well. I think the Bengals got a couple of bad calls on penalties. I won't complain too much being a Chiefs fan, but I've definitely been on the other side of that where it just seems like the calls are against you. I think there was one or two calls that, maybe they met the definition of a penalty, but it seemed pretty light, like probably should have let it go. So that was exciting. I know the one guy on the Bengals was super upset and crying on the sidelines, and that sucks for him. What can you do? I think it's pretty cool that the Chiefs have been to the AFC Championship game 5 years in a row. Now that we've had Andy Reid as our head coach for the last 10 years, that's pretty awesome. That consistency is quite fun and enjoyable. Since being a lifelong Chiefs fan, the 15, 20 years before that, we royally sucked and went through a lot of head coaches, and it was just not a fun time to be a Chiefs fan. These last 5 years have been a lot of fun. So going back to Super Bowl for the third time here in the last few years, hopefully we'll see how we do against the Eagles. I'm really excited about that. I tried to win some tickets to the Super Bowl, did not win. That would have been cool to go to. We'll watch that in a few weeks and have a good time. And then next up in sports, this last weekend I took Jackson, my oldest son, and we went down to San Antonio for a weekend trip, and we went to the Royal Rumble, the WWE pay-per-view event, or premium live event that they call them now. I'll still call them pay-per-views probably forever. It was a super fun time. We went down to San Antonio. I'd never been down to San Antonio. It was a pretty cool city to go hang out downtown and just explore. We went and saw the Alamo, went and did the River Walk, ate at some cool restaurants, went up the top of the Tower of the Americas, learned some cool stuff. And then the day before was over at the Alamo Dome to watch the Royal Rumble pay-per-view event. There was 50,000 people there. It was super packed, super crowded, super nice people. Everybody was huge fans. Lots of cool merchandise you could buy that was expensive. So many fans had belts, wrestling belts that they were carrying and wearing around. Lots of people dressed up. It was just a fun time. The crowd was insane. Anytime somebody would come in and get announced or their music would kick off. 50,000 people would go nuts. I posted some videos on my Instagram if you saw them, on my Instagram stories. It was just a lot of fun to be in a crowd that big that was just super excited. They had lots of lasers and lights. The fireworks and pyrotechnics that go off inside the building were super loud. Like, you had to cover your ears and you would jump because it would scare you because it was so loud. It was just super exciting, fun time to watch it all live versus on TV. And then it's kind of interesting to go back and watch some of it on TV, on Peacock, and hear the commentary and see the up-close camera angles. I was sitting up high, what I would call the nosebleeds, but I could still see great. And it was just as much fun to watch live as it was to sit on my couch and watch it. So that's one of the big 4 pay-per-views of the year. I don't know if I'll ever make it to the other ones, but if you get a chance to go watch live wrestling, and just, I would say being in the crowd is probably the funnest part of it, just to hear and be a part of that and all the reactions. So that was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to some wrestling coming to town in March, and then anytime it comes around again sometime. So if you ever get the chance, go to a special event like that. Go do it just for once, for fun, and you'll just have a good time. Even if you're not a huge wrestling fan, it's a fun time. Those are my sports updates for this episode. All right, the last segment of this episode is going to be faith. So when I write these episodes, I've got a list of like 15 to 20 different segments, and I have them all marked as optional, and I'll go through and write yes, yes, no, 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 if I'm going to put that segment and talk about that stuff in the episode. And common ones you'll see or hear are TVs, music, news, stuff like that, sports, computer stuff, army stuff, health and fitness, stuff like that. I noticed in the last few episodes I hadn't used my faith segment in a while, and I thought, you know what, I've actually got some thoughts on this and have some stuff to talk about. The verse of the day, I would also say, like, I'm gonna call it a chapter of the day that I'd encourage you to go check out, is Psalms 32. I'm not going to read it on here, but go check it out. Go read it. It's in the Old Testament. I was going to say, you know, maybe if you're like me, maybe once in a great while you make some mistakes in your life. You know, maybe you beat yourself up too much about it. Maybe it takes you a long time to work through that, confess it to God. Maybe it even takes you even longer to come around to accepting his forgiveness. Maybe you have accepted the forgiveness. Maybe you're still struggling with guilt or shame related to your sin. You know, maybe you've set up different levels in your head of sin and you've done the worst or the lightest. It's all the same to God. It's sin, whether, you know, lying or stealing a piece of bubble gum versus murder. Obviously, the consequences for that in society and life are different and varied, but it is all the same to God. And so maybe you've struggled with some stuff at different levels and you've had a hard time dealing with guilt or shame. I recently came across Psalms 32 in my Bible readings, and it was very refreshing. There is some stuff that I had worked through in my mind. I had done the confessing. I had repented and moved away from it, but there was still kind of that lingering guilt and shame, you know. And verses 1 and 2 talk about the joy you can have with living honestly. I've been reading my Bible a lot lately, and I kind of go through phases where I'm really good about it or I'm really bad about it. But it's been very refreshing to have just some joy and happiness, and that's kind of been bleeding over into other areas of my life because I've been reading my Bible. And it talks about you can have that joy when you're living honestly. You've confessed that stuff. You're being honest. Some of the lessons that I'm continuing to learn while I'm reading God's Word is that it's inspiring. It's ego crushing. I need plenty of that to make sure I keep my ego in check. And it's also helpful in difficult times. I mentioned earlier that I'm going to have an episode on reintegration, you know, getting back into your life after being gone for a year. I'll be honest, part of reintegration has been very, very difficult. It's not been easy. We're working through it and we're making progress, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been very challenging. So lately I've decided, you know what, life has been hard, and I got back into the Bible about 3 weeks ago, and I've been reading it every day, and I've been seeing a lot of value and a lot of return on investment in that just by making that a priority. So that's something I would encourage you to do as well. If you can spend 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, just read it. And just even that silly habit of reading it or telling someone, hey, this is what I read today. This is what I thought about today because I spent 5 minutes on it. It's been affecting my attitude, my work ethic, my parenting, my relationship with my wife and my kids, all that stuff. It's been positively affecting it. It doesn't mean I haven't had bad days or, work was hard one day, or it doesn't say I won't get in a fight with my wife or whatnot, but it's helping me put that stuff in perspective and helps me work through it quicker and easier than if I was trying to do it all on my own. That's kind of the verses that I want to talk about with Psalms 32. It's not a long chapter. Go check it out, and I think you'll get some value out of it. And then I also just wanted to say I'm really glad to be back in church. I honestly didn't do a lot of the church stuff when I was on deployment. I think a lot of that was just due to social anxiety and awkwardness and fear and stuff. I probably should have worked through it, but it was easier just to ignore and not do it. But I'm back in my church here, back at home, going every week, and it's just a great church. It focuses on the gospel and talking about how important that is. It's been helping me focus on godly things versus worldly things. It's very easy for me to get distracted on worldly things, or what I'd call good things, like career and providing for my family, which aren't bad things, but if I put them too high of a focus versus living for God, then that can become an idol too. So it helps me keep things in focus. It helps me remember that there are things that are more important than just money or providing or experiences or whatnot. There's a Bible verse that says, don't forget to keep going to church like some people have. It's a good thing for us as Christians. So I would highly encourage you to keep going to church. Find a good church that preaches the gospel unapologetically, because it's God's word. It's what he says. It doesn't matter what we think about it. So we need to accept it. That's what I want to talk about today in the faith segment. So hope that is encouraging to you all. All right, that'll do it for today's episode. I want to say thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, let me know. Send me your feedback. I always appreciate that. Derek@Creason.com. That's the email address where you can send all your feedback. You can connect with me on social media at Derek Creason on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You check out my website, DerekCreason.com. Sign up for my newsletter. Go to Amazon.com, type in my name, look up my book, 20-something, How to Survive the 10 Most Important Years of Your Life. I wrote it for 20-year-olds. It's applicable to teenagers, 30-year-olds, and older. Just things that you're going to go through in your life, and you got to figure out whether you want to or not. And just some of the lessons that I learned along the way, and maybe you could learn them sooner from my silly stories versus having to fumble your way through it on yourself. It's available on Kindle and on paperback. You can even read it for free if you're a member of Amazon's Kindle program, whatever it's called. I can't remember the name of it. So go check that out. I host this podcast on Anchor.fm. It's available on all major podcasting platforms. So go subscribe, like, and share to your heart's content. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys later.